Let us see the properties of isoquant curves. The properties of isoquant curves. The isoquant curve has negative slope. Isoquant curves are convex to the origin. Non-intersection of isoquant curves, that is, isoquant curves do not intersect. An upper isoquant curve represents a higher level of output. Isoquant curve does not touch either x-axis or y-axis. இதை மாதிரி ஏற்கனவே படித்த ஞாபகம் இருக்கா? இந்த மாதிரி ப்ராப்பர்ட்டிஸ் எங்கேயாவது படித்த ஞாபகம் இருக்கா? செகண்ட் சாப்டரில் நம்ம படித்தோம். செகண்ட் சாப்டரில் ப்ராப்பர்ட்டிஸ் ஆஃப் இன்டிஃபரன்ஸ் கர்வ் 2.14. Under that, we studied the properties of indifferent curves. So 4 properties we studied. Indifference curve must have negative slope. Indifferent curves are convex to the origin. Indifference curve cannot intersect. Indifferent curves do not touch the horizontal or vertical axis. Similarly, we have properties of isoquant curves, and both are almost similar. Both the properties are almost similar. Indifferent curve must have negative slope. Here also negative slope. Convex to the origin, convex to the origin. Indifference curve cannot intersect. இங்கேயும் என்னது? Non-intersection of isoquant curves. Indifference curves do not touch the horizontal or vertical axis. Isoquant curve does not touch either x-axis. X na horizontal, y-axis is called as the vertical axis. Only this is extra. An upper isoquant curve represents a higher level of output. இதை வந்து indifference curveலையும் படித்தோம். But we studied this under an indifference map ன்னு படித்தோம்ல, அதுக்கு கீழே இந்த பாயிண்ட்டை செப்பரேட்டாக படித்தோம். But here, this has been given as one of the properties of isoquant curve. This point we studied in the second chapter also, but it was not under the properties of indifference curve. That was given as a separate point. So both have similar properties, because here we dealt with consumption analysis. Here we are studying about the producer analysis or production analysis. So the properties of indifferent curves and isoquant curves are similar. So you can easily remember that. Now look at this graph. The isoquant curve has negative slope. Just like the indifference curve, the isoquant curve also has a negative slope. So what do you understand from negative slope? Negative slope means the indifference curve falls down from the left to the right. It falls down. It is not upward sloping, it is downward sloping. The indifference curve, like the indifference curve, the isoquant curve is also downward sloping. The isoquant curve is downward sloping. If it is downward sloping, we say negative slope. If it is upward sloping, we call it as positive slope. But here the isoquant curve has negative slope. Negative means it falls downwards. It slopes downwards from the left to the right, indicating that the factors are substitutable. We are substituting capital and labor. If capital is K5, labor is L2. More capital and less of labor. If you reduce the amount of capital, there is an increase in the labor. So we are substituting capital for labor. If more of one factor is used, we are increasing the labor from L2 to L3. If more of one factor is used, less of the other factor is needed. So if capital is K5, labor is L2. If we want to increase labor from L2 to L3, we have to decrease the units of capital from K5 to K4. Why should we decrease and increase the labor? Because we are producing the same level of output. So what is an isoquant? Isoquant uses 2 inputs. Okay, for production we are using 2 inputs, and they should give the same level of output. So here, when I increase the labor, I have to decrease the capital. Then only I will get the same level of output. So A, When it comes to B, capital is K4 and labor is L3. So we arrive at point B. If I want to come to the point C, I have to reduce capital to K3 and I have to increase the labor to L4. L4. So one factor is substituted for the other. One factor is substituted for the other to give the same level of output. So the isoquant curve has negative slope, or it slopes downwards from the left to the right. So in this diagram, I would like to repeat again. In the diagram, the combination A refers to more capital and less of labor. As the producer moves from A to B, from B to C, from C to D, more labor is used and less of capital is used. Were you able to understand? Next, isoquants are convex to the origin. This is only called as convex. This is origin. This part is origin. In the origin la பார்க்கும்போது எப்படி இருக்குது, convex-ஆ இருக்குது, bulging out. That is only called as convex. This explains the concept of diminishing marginal rate of technical substitution. Why is the isoquant convex to the origin? Because of MRTS of labor and capital. What is MRTS? Marginal rate of technical substitution. So let us go to the tabular column. Look at the tabular column. I'm increasing the labor. I'm increasing the labor. Labor எப்படி increase பண்றேன்? 2 increase பண்றேன். Uniform increase பண்ணிருக்கேன். ஆனா units of capital என்னாகுது? When I increase the labor, I have to reduce the capital. Is it not? Then only I will get the same level of output. 5 combinations of labor units and units of capital. There are 5 combinations A, B, C, D of labor units and units of capital yield the same level of output. So when I increase the labor, I have to reduce the capital. So initially from A to B, I increase 2 units of labor and I reduce capital by 8. When I move from B to C, I increase 2 units of labor and here capital is reduced by 6 units. Again, when I move from C to D, units of labor is increased by 2, whereas the units of capital has reduced by 4. இப்போ இங்கேயும் அதே 2, ஆனால் இங்கே ரிடக்ஷன் வந்து எப்படி இருக்கு? 2 தான் இருக்கு. அப்போ கேபிட்டல் உடைய டிக்ரீஸ் வந்து எப்படி இருக்குன்னா 8, 6, 4, 2 ரெடியூஸ் ஆகிட்டே வருது. திஸ் இஸ் ஒன்லி கால்ட் அஸ் diminishing marginal rate of technical substitution. லேபர் வந்து ஈக்குவலாக தான் மாறிட்டு வருது, ஆனால் கேபிட்டல் மட்டும் எப்படி மாறுது? 8, 6, 4, 2. So this is only called as diminishing marginal rate of technical substitution. The capital substituted by 1 unit of labor goes on decreasing when moved from top to bottom. So the capital is decreasing when you move from top to bottom. If so, it is called as diminishing marginal rate of technical substitution. That's why the indifference curve slopes downwards and it is convex to the origin. Next one, non-intersection of isoquant curves. In the diagram பாருங்க, 2 isoquant curve இருக்கு. First isoquantல வந்து 100 units, secondல 300 units. So point B la they are producing 100 and point C la they are producing 300 because this red color isoquant is higher than the blue color isoquant. So here we have 300, here we have 100. So blue la இருக்குது வந்து 100 units. அப்போ A எங்க இருக்கு? blue la இருக்கா redல இருக்கா? blue லன்னு யோசித்தா blueல இருக்கு, redல பார்த்தா redலயும் இருக்கு, ஏன்னா ரெண்டு இந்த இடத்துல intersect ஆகுது. அப்போ A is equal to B, correct. C is equal to A, that is also true. Can B be equal to C? That cannot happen. So isoquant curve cannot cut each other. இந்த ஏல இருக்க பாயிண்ட் என்ன அர்த்தம்? ஏனா என்ன அர்த்தம்? 100 is equal to 300 அர்த்தம். அது சாத்தியமா? இல்லை. So isoquant curves cannot cut each other. Were you able to understand this point? So look at the point A. Point A lies on isoquant 1. Okay. A lies on isoquant 1 and A lies on isoquant 2. But the point shows a point C shows a higher output. எவ்வளோ output 300. Point B shows a lower output. எவ்வளவு 100. இந்த இடத்துல ரெண்டு ஈக்குவல் ஆக முடியுமா? So can B be equal to C? No. So isoquant curves cannot cut each other. Fourth point, an upper isoquant curve represents higher level of output. Here look at IQ1. IQ1 you are producing 100 units. IQ3 you are producing 300 units. So IQ3 is above IQ1. That means they are producing more output. So an upper isoquant curve represents higher level of output. புரிஞ்சுதா? isoquant curve மேலே போக போக output என்ன ஆயிட்டே இருக்கும், ஜாஸ்தி ஆயிட்டே இருக்கும். So an upper isoquant curve represents higher level of output. Higher IQ3 shows higher outputs and lower IQ1 shows lower outputs. For upper isoquant curve implies the use of more factors than the lower isoquant curve. So இந்த இடத்துல factors நிறைய யூஸ் பண்ணப்பே 300 units வருது, இங்க factors கம்மியா யூஸ் பண்ணப்பே 100 units தான் ப்ரொடியூஸ் பண்ண முடியுது. So the arrow in the figure shows an increase in the output with the right and upward shift of an isoquant curve. Right side க்கு போது, higher side க்கு போது. So that means there is an increase in the output. The last one, isoquant curve does not touch either the x-axis or the y-axis. In the diagram பாருங்க, IQ1 எங்க தொட்டுட்டு இருக்கு? கேபிட்டல்ல தொட்டுட்டு இருக்கு. அப்பனா என்ன அர்த்தம்? லேபர் வந்து 0ன்னு அர்த்தம். லேபர் 0, கேபிட்டல் வந்து OC. At this particular point, how much is the amount of labor? Labor is 0. Labor, because on the x-axis we have marked labor. Labor is 0. How much is the capital? We are using this much capital. But isoquantனாலே என்னது? ரெண்டு ஃபேக்டரும் யூஸ் பண்ணணும். லேபரும் யூஸ் பண்ணணும், கேபிட்டலும் யூஸ் பண்ணணும். Because in the assumptions we saw 2 factors of production are used. In this case, there is only one factor of production is used. வெறும் கேபிட்டல் மட்டும் தான் யூஸ் பண்றோம், லேபர் யூஸ் பண்றது இல்லை. இந்த ப்ளூ பாயிண்ட்டுக்கு வந்தீங்கன்னா இந்த இடத்துல, ஓகே, if you come